Well, hello, everybody. How are we doing? Last session of the day for next day one. How's everybody feeling? We feeling good? Awesome. I like that you have chosen to end your day talking about data analytics and BI. There's nothing I'd rather be doing at the end of my day today. And before we get to our incredible set of panelists today and sort of introduce each of them, the thing that strikes me about this room, and sort of if you look around at this room, this is a room full of the people who have the answers. If you think about your role in the company, and just show of hands here, how many people are sort of considered to be the data person in their company? Show me your hands. All right, wow, that's almost everybody in here. Okay, so another question. How many of you feel like you're the only data person in the company? Okay. I worked at a startup like 180 years ago, and so I know what that feels like. I'm very old. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to sort of be the person with the answers. That's a really hard role to be in. It's a really important role to be in. I think the thing that we're gonna talk about today is sort of a transformation that has been happening. And this transformation from being the people with the answers to the people who are the enablers, right? And so with that, I'd encourage you as we sort of get to the end of this, like ask your questions. We have incredibly talented data analytics leaders here and would really ask you to come grab the mic at the end of this session and ask your questions so we can really make this conversational. Okay, so with that, we are trying to advance my slides here. All right, perfect. So with that, I want to introduce our amazing panel. Number one is Amy Yuri Stickler, who is the Director of Global Strategic Initiatives for Google Cloud. Next to her is Sharon Prosser, who is the Vice President of SMB Sales and Scaled Acquisition for Google Cloud. And last but not least is Yasmeen Ahmad, who is the Managing Director for Product Activation, Data Analytics, and Google Cloud. And I'm Bryson Gordon, and I am the Senior Director of Growth Marketing and Scaled Marketing at Google Cloud, and just thrilled to be here with all of you. So with that, let's jump in, and I'm gonna start with Amy. Amy has been at Google for over 20 years. And so Amy, as being the most tenured person at Google on this panel, would love to get your perspective on how have you seen data analytics, BI transforming over your career here at Google?
Thanks, Bryson, and good to see you all. I think, how many of you in the audience are AdWords or Google Ads users? Anyone? Okay, we have some. So, when I started at Google, we obviously were at that point just a search company. But even back then, what people would come to ask us about was, help me understand what people are searching for. And, through the evolution of obviously us becoming a much larger company and the growth of Google Cloud, the question still remains, which is help me understand how to leverage the data that you have and to create insights with that. So I would say if you look at how both the smallest organizations and the largest organizations, the ones that are successful are the ones that think about how do you turn data into insights, and then how do you democratize that data within the organization, whatever size of the organization that you may have. I've worked with the largest companies that Google works with on the advertising space, and we followed the same kind of principle that Google had in terms of creating successful products, which is how do I create a tool that passes the toothbrush test? Which means if I don't create something that people within my organization are going to use hopefully at least twice a day, it's not going to be something that actually is useful and or that actually changes behavior. And so I would say, as I think about data intelligence and business intelligence for this group is, your job is going to change from being the source of information to somebody that can actually create insights for others through data dashboards and through teaching your organization how to truly find and access data in this new world, how to teach them how to use generative AI to even ask data intelligent questions that get answers, and then ultimately to be not the person, but the source that creates that toothbrush tool, hopefully, that actually creates that organizational change.
I love that. I also feel like, note for next year at Next, we should have toothbrush swags to hand out to all of our data folks. Yasmeen, I'd love to get your perspective on a similar thing in terms of where do you see the trajectory of business intelligence heading?
Thanks, Bryson. So I'm super excited to be here because truly I believe business intelligence is about to be completely disrupted with generative AI and everything that we're seeing in the AI space. And why do I say that? Well, when I take a step back and look at business intelligence and how it's done today, we've had this promise of data democratization forever. Everybody's spoken about data democratization. We want everybody in the business to have access to data and insights at their fingertips. But the reality of when I speak to customers of what's actually happening is you have a centralized team or you have somebody who is the data person in the organization, and you have to go to that person who's got access to the data, who understands how to connect tables together and pull out a report or create a dashboard. And ultimately, if you have to go through that process every time you want an insight, you stop asking questions. You stop doing that speed of thought analysis of, oh, what's happening with my sales? Oh, if it's linked to this region, can I look at it by country or can I look at it by demographic? You only ask very pre-planned, pre-scripted questions. You get your fixed dashboard. And that's already a huge effort. And you prevent your business from really being able to leverage data, ask different questions, really drill down for insights. And ultimately, after getting those dashboards or reports, what do we all do? We open up slides and we start creating the presentation that you have to deliver at that MBR or that QBR or that next meeting. So this entire journey of getting from data to really action, which is what we all want to do. We want to take action based on data. Today, it just takes far too long, way too complex, and ultimately it hinders us from using data. And so the way I look at it is today we're taking humans and expecting them to learn technology and learn how to use UIs and code and dashboards and reports versus actually getting the technology to understand the human. And so with generative AI and large language models, we have an opportunity to get the technology now to really speak the language of humans, speak natural language, and I think that opens many, many doors for us.
So I love this. One of the ways, in some of the data and BI teams that I've managed, we used to talk a lot about, does our data strategy have tunnel vision, right? Which is a very linear approach to, I'm asking a specific question, I'm getting a specific answer, but it tends to miss everything that's around it. And sort of that context and what's in that periphery, I think, is where a lot of the most interesting insights in a business can come from. And so Sharon, turning to you, you work with customers every single day. When you think about customers who you talk to, who you work with, who are sort of winning at sort of implementing their data strategy, what are some of the patterns that emerge there?
Yeah, in my role, between myself and my teams, we do have a lot of customer interaction, and what the customers are looking for are somewhat, I would say, easy, answers to questions such as, what is my customer acquisition cost? What are my churn signals? What is the lifetime value of my customers? Is that customer moving through the journey that I've laid out in such a way that has positive outcomes? And a lot of things around customer analytics. That's a really popular theme that we talk with customers about. It seems to be a blind spot that they're looking at unlocking. Same with product in the product area, product adoption. What's my product usage like? So that information can be actioned by feeding it back into development. So really, it's looking at where those blind spots are. And it's a lot around customer analytics, product analytics, website analytics. So that's one key win. The second is access to helpful and useful data, which means reining in that proliferation of dashboards that exist. If you've got 10 to 20 different data sources and each of them have a dashboard, it's the standard meeting. You spend 20 minutes debating whose report is most accurate and whose data's, should we run the meeting against, and then you've got very little time to actually, take the insights and build an action plan. So those are two wins that customers are looking for as they go through their data journey.
I love this last point, and I think a lot of people in the room have had the experience of coming to a meeting and trying to decide whose data is right. It's interesting. It's sort of where that works well, in my experience, has been where you actually invest the time at the beginning in establishing a common language of the business. There is a unified language of the business where every term is defined by specific data that avoids all those problems of when we talk about LTV, how are we defining LTV, right? When we're talking about churn, how are we defining churn, right? Or whatever it is, it's sort of investing in almost like that data dictionary that helps to script a common language for everyone across a variety of roles, I think is one of the most foundational investments that folks like the folks we have in this room can make. Yeah. But so let me throw back to you, Sharon, and then I'd open this up to everyone. It's great, like the wins are great, but let's talk about the losses. And let's talk about sort of the mistakes, the pitfalls, especially the things that are avoidable. What has been some of your experience with customers there?
Yeah, the first thought that comes to my mind is data readiness. And again, I mentioned if you've got your data in 10 to 20 different sources or more, you're gonna be challenged with getting the full value out of a BI solution. And there's really no shortcut around getting your data cleaned up, establishing key business metrics, that the organization is signed off on, that you will operate against. And if you try and shortcut that piece, it's going to come back to haunt you in so many ways, especially as your business grows and scales. I think the second mistake that I see is customers making what I would call a short-term decision. There are a lot of BI solutions in the market, let's be frank. And if you pick a solution that does the quick and dirty, right then and there, and you're probably going to be back in the market looking as your business grows. And so, I turn to our BI solution, and we've put a lot of thought into the portfolio. And if you are a 1 to 2 small team of data personnel, and think of the Looker Studio. That's one offering in our portfolio, and you can get dashboards up in minutes. It's free, and then as you need more enterprise features built into your operation, you upgrade to Looker Studio Pro, and you get a little bit more admin control around the environment. And then when you're ready to go to an end-to-end BI solution, you can advance to the Looker platform. And there you've got access to data governance, the ability to take action on the data in the platform, and so many other enterprise-grade features. And it's that ability to, for us to meet you where you are and grow with you. And I'll share just a quick example with a customer. They were a startup looking to unlock the music distribution business for emerging artists. And they came to us, they had a one-person data team, and they started on that Looker journey with us. And they now serve thousands of users. They're in 45 markets. And they haven't had to grow their data team, that much. And so that decision to go with the Looker BI offering has served them well over their journey.
Yeah, actually, Sharon, as you were talking, it reminded me of a customer I spoke to, multinational financial institute, and they actually told me they'd ended up with 16,000 dashboards. And you kind of wonder, do we really need 16,000 dashboards? Is there that many combination of metrics and dimensions to show? And ultimately, I think, talking to the points that you made there, Sharon, if you don't look at your data foundation to begin with, it's really easy for many dashboards to just proliferate across the organization. And I hear time and time again from different organizations that they have all of these dashboards, might be 16,000 of them, yet they don't have any data or insight because they go from one dashboard to the next and the metrics don't match. The customer lifetime value, the sales, revenue, numbers don't match. And so this is why, from a product perspective, me being in the product team, we're really focused on this problem of trusted and governed data and metrics for business intelligence, because none of those dashboards are useful. You might as well only have 5 dashboards if you can truly trust and feel like you can trust the data and it's governed, versus 16,000 across the organization. And a recent customer, a Looker customer of ours, Gymshark, they essentially came and engaged us purely because of that reason. They had so many silos of data, they had lots of reports, but just couldn't get trusted metrics. And so coming in the conversations that they had with us and the data strategy that they built, it was all about that trusted, governed data foundation on which they could really get true insights.
I love that. So, Amy, I'm gonna come to you in a minute. I love the discussion of dashboards within the context of sort of data life beyond the dashboard. And a lot of what sort of our roles are within organizations is people talk about, how do you establish data culture? How do you start to build data culture, not just within a data team, but across the entirety of an organization? And so, Amy, I'd love your perspective on how do you think about best practices, and I'd love everyone's perspective on this, especially because you work on such different teams. But starting with Amy, how do you think about building data culture across an organization, and to what extent is Gen AI going to catalyze a fundamental acceleration of that?
So, again, I've had the pleasure of working with companies that are both small and large. And I think cultural change and establishing cultural norms, you have to have the C-suite buy-in. And so I would say, not thinking of data or business intelligence just as a back office function as a first thing, and really making sure that between whatever C-suite that sits within your company, that you are establishing those kind of, here's how we're defining the data, here's how we're going to talk about data within the organization. And then, like anything, most of you probably have seen, if you can get your what's the CEO care about? And then oftentimes, we have really focused in on, okay, let's create that view that the CEO cares about, because if he starts or she starts caring, then we can get kind of the downstream functions to start asking better questions that then will create that organizational change. So I would say if you haven't already established, a common language amongst the executive team, if you don't know what your CEO really cares about in the data journey, it's a good time to open that conversation. And then, lastly, to your question on how Gen AI is going to change that, I think there's a lot of people that just don't really understand still. Like, okay, how can Gen AI help my organization? So I think if you can actually, what we're finding in the organizations we're working with is very simple POCs that basically demonstrate, some of them, you may have seen today in some of the sessions or whatnot, but just demonstrate how Gen AI can help basically answer questions faster than humans can in much more succinct ways. The summarizations, as an example, I think you'll then start getting the executive team to understand, oh, wow, this is super powerful. This is helping me get insights for things that I care about, right? So what is it that they care about? And then fundamentally, you'll start kind of getting, hopefully, the support you need to invest in generative AI even more so if you haven't already. Over to you guys.
I'll just add, and we'll come to culture more. It's I ran a large data analytics team during the presidential election in 2020, and we were in absolute dashboard hell. That was dashboard after dashboard after dashboard. The candidate wants to see this, the candidate wants to see that, and it was, thank God Looker Studio is so fast and so agile at creating dashboards. But if everyone didn't see the demo this morning of Duet AI working with BigQuery and Looker, go watch it. It's phenomenal. It's the type of thing that it's going to change the way that we think about answering these types of questions, where you can now just ask that question, and instead of going and building, a half dozen dashboards to try and find the insight, it's going to be able to extract that. And that's, for me, one of the really interesting aspects of data culture that I think is going to shift. But Sharon, I get to sit in your rev calls, every other week, and I know you are just a master at running data culture in your organization. Would love your perspective on how you've built that out.
Yeah, I'm a sales leader, so of course the numbers are important, and the accuracy of those numbers are also really critical. And we spend a lot of time in the organization looking at what are the channels that are feeding those pipeline numbers. And I do that in partnership with marketing. And I can't show up to a conversation with a set of data that we're not already in agreement with, that frankly our teams aren't already looking at and building a hypothesis around, or we would have that ubiquitous meeting of, hey, let's talk about the data for 20 minutes and then we'll talk about the revenue. So, it's got to be at the core of how we do business, and that's just in order to drive great partnerships across the organization. But again, back to that sales leadership role, it's important all the way down to the individual contributor that they understand, how they're performing against, their targets, and that data has to be accurate. So, data is at the core of what we do just by nature of the function. From a Gen AI standpoint, I think it unlocks the ability for us to do a lot of scenario planning and asking those what-if questions as we look to make investments or, maybe pull back in some areas. So I think it's going to help get away from the, sort of the prescribed questions and let us think more creatively about how we go to market. So.
And Yasmeen, coming to you to close this out before we go to questions, bringing it right back to the beginning, a team of one, right? The people who sort of have the answers, who a lot of that is on their shoulders. What advice would you have for them in terms of building data culture and enabling Gen AI to help drive a transformation?
Yeah, so I hope everybody got a chance to see the keynote this morning where we demoed the new conversational UI experience for Looker. You saw in that demo, basically, it could be a business person chatting with their business data. So what we're doing is we're taking large language models, imagine the Bard, and putting it on top of actually your structured and unstructured enterprise business data, your sales data, your revenue data, your customer 360 data, and enabling you to ask questions of your data. And in that demo, you saw it doesn't just come back with insights, it comes back with charts and graphs that back up that insight and show where that insight came from. And so very much we see the future of BI trending in that space of becoming much more natural language, conversational UI based. But to elaborate on that demo, it's not just a one-way question. What we see with large language models and this multi-chat interface is it remembers the question that you asked 10 seconds before, an hour before, or even a week before. So it becomes a conversation because the system knows the types of questions that you're asking at month end, quarter end. So it's stateful, it understands context, and it can help to get you to the right answers based on the context you're looking for. And finally, rather than have the human user, again, take that insight and now create the slides. What you saw in the demo this morning was you click the button for slide generation and it actually creates the slides with the charts, with the summaries for you. So we see the future of BI not being actually reports and dashboards, because reports and dashboards were about you as a data person having to go to a tool that had a predefined dashboard to pull some data or have to create a dashboard, which was labor intensive. We see the future of BI being BI showing up where you are. It's completely assistive to the human. So if you're on a mobile device, it should be there. If you're in Sheets, it should be there. If you're in Slides, it should be where you are working. You should not have to come out of your workflow, come out of your business to go access data. And a perfect example of a customer who's been working with us on this is Carbon Health. They wanted to get data out into their clinics. And so their clinicians actually use Sheets today. And so they used our Connected Sheets plugin to actually serve reports and metrics to the users where they're working. And then they took it a step further with the Google Suite, and they actually turned those into PDF reports that are emailed. Because the first thing the clinician comes and does in the morning is open their email and check. And so that's where they are. So we want the data and insights to show up where the business user is at the time they need it. If it's 4 a.m. in the morning and you're an executive, or it's the weekend, it's where you need it, when you need it, and in the format you need it. So that's very much where we see BI going today. And to get to that journey of really having large language models be able to do that and for your business is back to what Sharon was talking about, getting the foundation in the right order so that you do have that structured, unstructured data on top of which we can layer these LLMs. And so in an earlier session, I'm going to steal from that session, it was mentioned that every AI problem is actually a data problem in disguise. And I truly believe that. The large language models have made AI accessible and democratized to everybody, but now it comes back to the data.
I love that.